Hello friends, welcome to a new chapter today. All these pictures which I am taking are from Netter's Atlas. Okay, so now let us learn something about asthma. Okay, so first we will see the introduction of asthma through many pictures. Okay, so that you will have well versed with the pictures, then you can go to theory in a proper way. Okay, so first, in the asthma, if you see, asthma is more common in younger children in childhood. See, asthma is mainly of two types. Okay, so let me first write here. Okay, so if you see, before we go into all this, I'll just write here. Asthma is mainly of two types. One, we have extrinsic asthma, okay, or it is early onset asthma, and second, we have intrinsic asthma or non-atopic asthma or late onset asthma. Okay, so this extrinsic asthma or early onset asthma is more common in childhood. This allergic asthma or this asthma which you are seeing here is extrinsic or atopic or early onset or allergic asthma. Here it occurs in children and it is most commonly associated with allergens. Allergens can be pollen, food, drugs, dust, danders or anything. Okay, and if you do skin hypersensitivity tests, they will be positive. Okay, there is no association with COPD is not there in this type of asthma. And here if you see the histology, you see presence of eosinophils. Eosinophils are present in this type of extrinsic asthma. Okay, here there is also increased IgE is associated in this asthma, and the treatment of this asthma, it is best treated with inhaled corticosteroids. It is best treated with inhaled corticosteroids. It is also associated with asthma is associated with eczema in childhood also in this type of asthma. Okay, so this is an adult who has asthma attack. He looks something like this. Then we have something called as non-allergic asthma, or also called as intrinsic asthma or late onset asthma. Okay, it is more common in adult patient. Okay, it is common here. The family history is usually negative. Okay, here it is associated with Staphylococcal aureus toxin, and it is also sometimes associated with aspirin also. It is associated with aspirin hypersensitivity or nasal polyp. Okay, here there is no allergen at all. You won't see any allergen, or there is no history of eczema in childhood also. Okay, in this type of here the cellular infiltrates are usually present, and it is also associated with COPD. Remember that this type of asthma is associated with COPD, whereas the intrinsic asthma is not associated with COPD. Here IgE levels are actually normal. It is not associated with increased IgE. Then what is the treatment of this? Treatment of this is giving high dose corticosteroids should be given. For this you should give high dose corticosteroids. This is about intrinsic asthma or late onset asthma. Okay, so this is high dose corticosteroids are given. Then, so once you have learned about this, so let us now learn about the etiology of asthma. Okay, so in the etiology we have many different etiology. So before going into the inducers of asthma, let us see the genetic considerations in asthma. In asthma is actually associated with, it is etiology, it is associated with single nucleotide polymorphisms, that is polygenic inheritance. Okay, there is single nucleotide polymorphisms are seen in genes chromosomes 5q, including T helper cells, and there is also association with interleukin 4, interleukin 5, interleukin 9 and interleukin 13. There is 5p single nucleotide polymorphisms, and there is association with interleukin 5, sorry, interleukin 4, interleukin 5, interleukin 9 and interleukin 13. Remember, it is also associated with certain genes like ADAM33, DPP10 and GPRA genes. Okay, and it is also associated with one more gene, which is arginine glycine 16 variant on beta 2 receptor. Okay, so these are the different genetic associations of asthma. Along with that, it is associated with infections like common cold or viruses, sinusitis, bronchitis or bronchiolitis. It is associated with inhaled allergens like pollen, house dust, feathers, animal dander, furniture sniffing or fungal spores. It is associated with irritants like fumes, those which produce fumes. The fumes can be from paint or gasoline or tobacco smoke or industrial chemicals. It is common in cold air or air pollutants. It is also sometimes it is associated with laughter also, with physical exercise. Okay, physical exertion, emotional stress also, psychological stress. It is also associated with various drugs. Okay, so these are the different associations which you see with asthma. Okay, then once you have seen the associations with asthma, now we will see about the hyperresponsiveness and airway hyperresponsiveness. See, this we will see at the end. Okay, okay. 1 minute. First we will see the pathophysiology of asthma. Okay, this is the first one. So if you see, asthma is actually a type 1 hypersensitivity reaction. Asthma is actually a type 1 or immediate hypersensitivity reaction. Here it is more common in atopic individuals. So in atopic individuals, if you see, this is type 1 hypersensitivity reaction where you have, this is IgE, okay, antibody. So first we will see allergen. This allergen is pollen. Once it has been inhaled, so in the lungs there is activation of these lymphocytes, okay, mostly plasma cells. So these lymphocytes will produce immunoglobulins. These immunoglobulins are attached on the mast cell. Okay, these mast cells and basophils, these are sensitized by these IgE antibodies. Okay, this is the first response, sensitization. Nothing happens in this response, he'll be fine. Okay, next, once he gets exposed to the same allergen again, so in that phase already the antibodies are formed and they are circulating in the blood. Now these antibodies react with these antigens, okay, and there occurs cross-linking of antibodies and antigens occurs, and this leads to the this mast cells will again get attached to the antibodies, which in turn gets attached to antigens. Thus these mast cells are activated. So these mast cells and basophils, they will release inflammatory mediators like histamine. So these mast cells are releasing these inflammatory mediators are released by these mast cells like histamine, cystinyl leukotrienes or inflammatory cytokines and prostaglandins. And these inflammatory mediators like histamine causes smooth muscle contractions. There is also mucus gland hypersecretion, and there is eosinophil attraction, and there is increased capillary permeability occurs because of these inflammatory mediators. Okay, now after sensitization, what is happening to the allergen? There is sensitization to the allergen. Then before this IgE formation, what is actually happening? See, this is the antigen. Okay, once this antigen is taken up by the antigen presenting cells. Okay, so this antigen is taken up by the antigen presenting cells. These antigen presenting cells now activate the T cells. Okay, these T cells will activate T helper cells, and this T helper cells will activate T helper 2 cells. So these T helper 2 cells will activate interleukin 5, interleukin 4, interleukin 13, interleukin 9. So these interleukins are very important. So what are activated? Interleukin 4, 5, 9, 13 are activated. Interleukin 4, 5, 9, 13 are activated. So as a result, there is B cells are produced and eosinophils and mast cells are activated. Okay, so these B cells gets converted to plasma cells. These plasma cells secrete IgE. These IgE activate the mast cells. So these IgE and mast cells are activated in sensitization. Now the activated IgE and mast cells, whenever the second allergen comes, so this will release the mediators which leads to smooth muscle contraction. So this is the pathogenesis which is seen in asthma. Okay, now what happens? So there are two responses which are occurring in asthma. Okay, in asthma pathophysiology we have two responses. One, we have late asthma response. Second, we have chronic asthma. Okay, in late asthma, that is not in the early phase but in the late phase of asthma, what is happening? There is T helper 2 cells which are activate mast cells. These mast cells will release the inflammatory mediators, okay, like cytokines, histamines, all those are released. So once they are released, what happens? They are released, these are the things which are happening. Once there will be increased cell permeability. Because of increased cell permeability, there is inflammatory cell migration. Okay, and there is also disruption of epithelium by eosinophil derived proteins. Okay, and there is also smooth muscle contraction, as we have already seen. Okay, so these are the things which happen, and these are mediated by cytokines and eosinophils. So you can see the cell which is happening. Then there is chronic asthma response. What is happening in chronic asthma response? In chronic asthma response, there is number one, thickened basement membrane, and there is chronic inflammation. These are the two things which are happening. See, here there is inflammatory cell migration. All the inflammatory cells are there, and there is increased allergens, and there is desquamated area is seen. So all these are seen. Okay, these are acute, like acute phase itself. But in chronic, there will be basement membrane thickening is seen. Okay, here the basement membrane thickening is not seen. Here there is basement membrane thickening is seen, and you see chronic inflammation. See, what is the cell which is seen in acute inflammation? Neutrophils are seen in acute inflammation. Neutrophils are seen in acute inflammation, whereas in chronic inflammation there will be lymphocytes which are seen. Okay, so here the inflammation is low grade and it extends beyond the muscularis propria. See, here it extends beyond the muscularis propria. Here mostly the inflammation is confined to the submucosa itself, lamina propria itself. That is one important thing. See, here it is in the submucosa and lamina propria. Here it is in the beyond the muscularis propria. Okay, so these are the important things which you see in late asthma. So once you have seen about the pathophysiology of asthma, now let us see the morphological features. Okay, we are going back again. Okay, now the sputum. See, in the asthma you will have to first see the sputum. Okay, in the sputum of asthma you see these macrophages. Okay, these crystals which you are seeing, this is very important, and these are called as Charcot-Leyden crystals. You will have to identify these. Okay, I'll show you even one more diagram also with HND stain. So this is Charcot-Leyden crystals. Actually, what are these Charcot-Leyden crystals? These Charcot-Leyden crystals are composed of a protein which is called as eosinophil membrane protein. It is composed of eosinophil membrane, okay, protein. It is this Charcot-Leyden crystals is composed of eosinophil membrane protein. What is this eosinophil membrane protein called as? Galactin. It is composed of an eosinophil membrane protein which is called as galactin 10. Okay, then it is also composed of, there are polymorphonuclear leukocytes which are seen, and there is Kurtzman spirals also. What are Kurtzman spirals? See, Kurtzman spirals are actually the whorls. These are the whorls of shed airway epithelium. The airway epithelium which is shed is seen as whorls, and they are called as Kurtzman spirals. Okay, then what else you see? You see something called as Crayola bodies. What are Crayola bodies? These are the individual epithelial cells which are present. These are individual epithelial cells which are present, which are called as Crayola bodies. See, these are in the whorl shape. These are like normal epithelial cells. Their morphology is maintained in Crayola bodies. In Kurtzman cells, the airway epithelial morphology is distorted. Whereas in Charcot-Leyden crystals, they are actually proteinaceous materials. Okay, so these are the things which you see in the sputum, unstained sputum. See, you see increased eosinophils. These are eosinophils with spectacle shaped nucleus and eosinophilic granules. Okay, so if you magnify it, see, these are the charcoal laden crystals which you are seeing here. These are charcoal laden crystals which are seen. Okay, so this is what you see in microscopy, histology. So these are very important in the sputum. Then let us see these changes. Okay, so here we are seeing the airway obstruction and airway hyperresponsiveness. So which test is done here? What is this boy doing? He is actually blowing out air in this machine. Okay, so this is called as spirometry or pulmonary function test or spirometry. Okay, this measures FEV1 and FVC ratio. FEV1 is the forced air which is forcefully exhaled by the boy in 1 second. Okay, in 1 second, this is the amount of air this is actually exhaled. Okay, the predicted value is this one, the actual value is this one. Okay, now this is very important, this graph. See, now this is the normal value. It should be like this normally, but here the child will have trouble in exhaling. Okay, so in this child FEV1 is decreased, less amount of air is exhaled in 1 second. See, in this graph, in 1 second, normally predicted, or in normal child, 2 liters of air has been exhaled. But in this child, only 1 liter of gas has been, 1 liter of gas has been exhaled. So there is decreased amount of air that is exhaled. So as a result, there is decreased amount of air that has been exhaled. Okay. So we should look. So as a result, this graph is actually like this. Okay, so here there is peak expiratory flow is normal, but the FEV1, that is that is the expiratory volume which is exhaled in 1 second, that has been decreased. Okay, so remember, if and FVC is normal. Okay, in this child also FVC is almost normal. So in that case, FEV1 by FVC is also decreased. Okay, so this is what happens in asthma. And in asthma there is a test which is done, which is very important, which is called as methacholine or exercise challenge test. So what is this methacholine or exercise challenge test? In this, the child is given nebulized methacholine, okay, at increasing doses. Okay, after giving nebulized, see, this is the normal value of FEV1. After giving methacholine, what does methacholine do? Methacholine will cause bronchoconstriction. Okay, so once it causes bronchoconstriction in asthma, after giving methacholine for few doses, repeated doses, you see the fall in FEV1. If this fall in FEV1 is more than 20% from the baseline at a concentration of less than 8 milligrams per liter, then we call it as positive response. See, in this graph, in this child, at 8 milligrams per milliliter, the baseline is less than, see, it is around 55%. Okay, so normally it is 100. Now there is fall is almost 35%, sorry, yeah, 45% has been decreased. Normally if the this fall is more than 20%, then we call it as asthma, but here it is 45%. So obviously this child has asthma. That is methacholine challenge test. Then what is exercise challenge test? In this exercise challenge test, we will ask the child to do exercise. Okay, we will ask the child to do exercise for 5 to 8 minutes or 6 to 8 minutes. Then after exercise, the spirometry is done. This is the baseline spirometry. Then if you do the spirometry after exercise, again you see decrease in or fall in FEV1 values. If this fall in FEV1 value is more than 15% from baseline, okay, then it is a positive test. If the fall in FEV1 value is more than 15%, then it is positive test. How much is this one? Actually it is not given the values, but definitely after 6 to 8 minutes is somewhat here, it is more than 15%. Okay, so this is exercise induced exercise challenge test. Okay, so these are the important things. Then we have already seen the sputum. Then in these asthma patients, you can also do a hypersensitivity skin testing for allergy. So there are two different tests which you can do for allergy. Okay, we will see. So first test is called a scratch test. Okay, so these are skin testing for allergy. The first type of test, which is called a scratch test. In this, you do nothing. First, you will put the drops of allergen over your hand. After putting the drops of allergy over your forearm, molar aspect of forearm, then you will prick it. First, you will put single drop of control is put, and one drop of antigen is also put, and then you will prick it or you will scratch it. As a result, the antigen which is put, it goes into the dermis. Okay, that is scratch test. There is one more test which can be done, that is intradermal test. Actually, this intradermal test is more sensitive, and in this you will inject the allergen intradermally. Okay, now once you inject the allergen intradermally, what is the interpretation that you get? That is, you see a wheal and erythema. See, if there is only erythema but no wheal, then it is positive, but it is 2+. If there is erythema with wheal but there is no pseudopodia, then it is 3+. If there is erythema and there is wheal and there is also, these are the pseudopodias, if there is pseudopodia also, then it is also more, okay, positive. If there is nothing, only erythema, a small amount of erythema, very less, then that is negative control. Okay, this is the skin testing for allergy. So what is this? These are the differential diagnosis of asthma: congestive heart failure, bronchitis, bronchiectasis, anaphylaxis, inhalants, aspiration of food particles, allergic alveolitis, mediastinal masses, congenital congestive vascular diseases or hiatus hernia, laryngeal edema or laryngeal tumors, or vocal dysfunction. So all these will resemble bronchial asthma. Then, okay, what is the blood gas and pH relationships in asthma? So in blood, what is blood gas pH relationships in asthma? So in mild asthma, if you see, there is, what is happening in asthma, there is bronchoconstriction, right? So because of bronchoconstriction, so first what is happening in asthma is bronchoconstriction. Because of bronchoconstriction, there is bronchial obstruction which occurs. Okay, because of this bronchial obstruction, there is decreased oxygenation to the bronchi. Okay, to the bronchi, the oxygen going to the bronchi is decreased. So there is hypoxia. Okay, remember, whenever there is hypoxia, there is vasoconstriction occurs. That is one thing. And there is increased carbon dioxide elimination also. So because of that increased carbon dioxide, there is hyperventilation. This there is vasoconstriction. Okay, because of this there is hypoxia, there is activation of medullary centers, medullary respiratory centers, and these respiratory centers will activate the ventilation. Okay, and there is hyperventilation, and this will increase the carbon dioxide elimination. Because of carbon dioxide elimination, there is hypocapnia. Okay, because of this hypocapnia, there is decreased carbon dioxide, and as a result it goes to respiratory alkalosis. So this is the pathophysiology of how or what happens in mild asthma. Then what is happening in severe asthma or status asthmaticus? In status asthmaticus, again there is bronchial obstruction. Okay, because of this bronchial obstruction, there is decreased oxygen, and because of this oxygen, there is activation of respiratory centers. Okay, but these ventilation responses which are there, these are ineffective. There is hyperventilation, but it fails. Okay, and as a result, there is increased carbon dioxide. This increased carbon dioxide will result in respiratory acidosis. Okay, even here there can be compensatory mechanism by causing hyperventilation, but because of severity, okay, because of advanced obstruction, they cannot remove all the retained carbon dioxide, and as a result there is hypercapnia resulting in respiratory acidosis. So what is very important here is there is hyperventilation here resulting in hypocapnia, which results in respiratory alkalosis. That is important in mild asthma. But if you see in severe asthma, there is decreased blood oxygenation and the ventilatory responses become ineffective, and as a result there is hypercapnia, which causes respiratory acidosis. So in mild asthma there is respiratory alkalosis, in severe asthma there is respiratory acidosis. So these are very important. Then, so we have seen about most of the things about asthma. So let us see histology pictures also. So you'll see many mucus plugs. Okay, many mucus plugs are seen. Where are you seeing these? So these are the mucus plugs which you are seeing here. Okay, here you can see this is the foci of atelectasis are also seen. Okay, then if you see in the obstructed airway, you see the mucus plug which is seen. Okay, and there is thickened basement membrane also. See, you'll see the microscopic features very well. See, these are the PAS positive matrix, and this is polymorphonuclear neutrophils are seen. These are the eosinophils which are seen. Okay, these crystals are actually Charcot Leyden crystals. These are Kurtzman spirals. These whole is Kurtzman spirals. And then you see these bodies which are Crayola bodies. Okay, we have already seen all these, right? What are Crayola bodies? Crayola bodies are epithelial cells. Kurtzman spirals are denuded or degraded epithelial cells which are in walls, whereas Charcot Leyden crystals are, what are these? These are proteins which are eosinophilic proteins, which is galactin. Okay, then there is epithelial denudation also. There is thickening of basement membrane is seen, and hypertrophy of smooth muscles and glands are seen. This is Crayola body, Kurtzman spirals, Charcot Leyden crystals. Okay, now what are you seeing in this? In this you see the basement membrane hypertrophy. Just see here, this is the basement membrane which is very thin. See here, this is the basement membrane, this is this thick. Okay, so here there is basement membrane hypertrophy. Look at it again. Okay, so, there is basement membrane remodeling also, this can be called. So this is pathophysiology in asthma. Then how are you going to manage the asthma? You will have to do FEV1. Okay, pulmonary function test. In this you will have to do FEV1. It will be less than 30%. Then you will have to give bronchodilators. You will have to give oxygen. Okay, you will see, we will learn about it in a minute. Okay, these are the pictures from Robbins. Okay, so if you see, this is the bronchial asthma. So if you see, what are you going to see here? Here the lung is hyperinflated lung is seen. Okay, so these are the asthma. Then what are you going to see here? Here you are seeing the mucus secretions which are seen, and this is the bronchial tree with these are the mucus secretions which are seen, and this is the bronchial tree. Okay, then see it properly. Then this is the bronchial asthma. So in this we have two things. So this is the bronchial cartilage. Okay, and this is the mucus. Okay, you will see the bronchial cartilage, and this is the mucus. All this is covered with smooth muscle hypertrophy is seen, and you will also see the inflammatory cell exudate. Okay, this is type 1 hypersensitivity reaction. Okay, so these are the many cells which you see, mostly neutrophils. See, you can see eosinophils, and we can see neutrophils also. So this is a spectacular shaped, see this one, spectacular, see, 1 minute. Yeah, this is the spectacle shaped nucleus which is seen, right, which is eosinophil. What are these? These are Charcot Leyden crystals which are seeing. Then how does the this X-ray look? X-ray has not much changes, it is mostly normal, but sometimes you can see the hyperinflated lungs, but in most of the cases it will be normal. Okay, in the CT scan you see this is not the asthma patient, I'm sorry, this picture is wrong. Okay, next. Okay, now I have told you everything. I have taught you everything about most of the points about asthma. Only if you are left, we will just look at each and every point through my notes. Okay, so This is asthma. Asthma is episodic and reversible thing, and in the asthma we have, it is divided into two types, which is early asthma or atopic or early onset asthma, extrinsic asthma. Second type is intrinsic asthma, non-atopic and late onset asthma. So in extrinsic or atopic or early onset asthma, it is most common in childhood, whereas intrinsic is most common in adults. All these have been dealt already, but I am just brushing up again. So in intrinsic asthma, it is most common in atopic individual. Extrinsic asthma is most common in atopic. Extrinsic is everything about allergy. So it is common in atopic, it is common in allergens, okay, it is common in hypersensitivity tests. It gives positive result. It has eosinophils, type 1 hypersensitivity reaction, family history, increased IgE. All these are seen in early or atopic asthma. Whereas intrinsic or non-atopic asthma, it is seen in adults. Staphylococcal toxin, okay, no allergens are seen, okay, IgE is normal. There is not much history about non-atopic asthma, and this non-atopic asthma is most common in adults. Next, etiology. I have already told you about all these, so this is very important. It is a single nucleotide polymorphism, that is SNPs, and it is single nucleotide polymorphisms, and it is most commonly seen in interleukin 4, 5, 9 and 13, and also it is associated with genes like ADAM33, DPP and GPRA and arginine glycine 16 variants in beta 2 receptors. Okay, so all this is important. Okay, next these are important. What are the factors which precipitate the asthma? See, I have already dealt with them. All the allergens, smoker, sprays, you can even remember it by this mnemonic: asthma exacerbation, which is allergens, smoking, sprays, temperature variation, hay fever, bacterial and viral infection, medications, asthma, NSAIDs, non-selective beta blockers, acid reflux like GERD, air pollution, exercise, emotional stress and anxiety. Okay, in asthma this is important. There is a triad which is called as Samter's triad. In Samter's triad we have asthma, nasal polyp and sensitivity to aspirin triad. Okay, so this triad you should remember. So this is type 1 hypersensitivity reaction. I'll just brush up. I have already told you about this. So in aspirin sensitive asthma, there is aspirin. This aspirin increases the leukotrienes. Okay, this leukotrienes will cause the mast cell activation, which leads to release of histamine, causing bronchoconstriction. So the treatment here is, you will have to inhibit these leukotrienes and you will give a leukotriene inhibitor. Okay, what is the pathophysiology of actual asthma? That is allergens. So these allergens are Th2 cell dominated inflammatory response. So these will lead to eosinophil recruitment. These eosinophil will increase the production of IgE. These IgE have cross-linking of IgE is seen on mast cells. There is activation of mast cells. These mast cells release the inflammatory mediators, which causes bronchospasm, increased vascular permeability, mucus production. These will lead to leukocyte infiltration, leading to release of more mediators and damage of epithelium. All this is late reaction. Okay, then eosinophils will release the major basic protein in the eosinophils. This will lead to the epithelial damage. Okay, so these are the main things. Then what are you going to see in morphology? In morphology you see occlusion of bronchi and bronchioles by mucus plugs. Okay, and then you see numerous eosinophils. You see Charcot Leyden crystals, Kurtzman spirals and Crayola bodies. I have already shown you the pictures of these. Next you see airway remodeling occurs here. So there is eosinophilic infiltration. There is increased submucosal glands, goblet cells and metaplasia will occur. There is hypertrophy of bronchial wall, smooth muscles also. Okay, then this is important. What are the differential diagnosis of eosinophilic inflammation? Eosinophilic inflammation mainly occurs in allergy and parasitic infections. Then differential diagnosis of V's. V's occurs in COPD, cardiac asthma, carcinoid syndrome, recurrent emboli, foreign body, pulmonary vasculitis and eosinophilic pneumonia. These you should remember. What are the clinical features? The most important symptom is dyspnea, and there is mucus and wheeze, and there will be atopic symptoms like itching under the chin, discomfort in scapula or everything, and there will be rhonchi which are seen throughout the chest. And then here the child will have wheeze, which is the prominent feature. Okay, the child sweats profusely. He develops cyanosis and he becomes restlessness and fatigue is seen. Okay, so the wheeze is polyphonic. If there is mild bronchoconstriction, you see expiratory wheeze. If there is moderate bronchoconstriction, you see expiratory plus inspiratory wheeze. If there is severe bronchoconstriction, you see inspiratory wheeze. If there is very severe bronchoconstriction, you see that the chest is silent. So mild to moderate to severe, there will be expiratory, then progression to inspiratory, from there to silent chest. Okay, then in lung function test, there will be decreased FEV1 by FVC ratio. There are two tests which are important, three tests actually. One is bronchodilator response test. In this, you will give bronchodilator. You will administer bronchodilator, which is albuterol. Why? Because it is short acting. Okay, and if there is increase in FEV1 by more than 12% after giving this albuterol, then we call it as positive test, and we can call this as a asthma, because in COPD there won't be reversal, there won't be increase in FEV1 more than 15-12% after giving albuterol, but in asthma there will be increase in levels because it is a reversible airway remodeling. Then histamine challenge test or methacholine challenge test also. Okay, in this, if you see, you will give histamine or methacholine, and then if there is decrease in FEV1 by more than 20% after giving histamine and methacholine, then we call it as asthma. Then if you do ABG, there will be decreased hypoxia and there will be hypocapnia. Okay, actually this will depend upon the severity. If there is mild asthma, then there will be hypoxia and hypocapnia, but if there is severe asthma, then there will be hypercapnia and hypoxia. Okay, then how are you going to diagnose asthma? Asthma is diagnosed by this criteria. There will be reversibility of airflow and it should be episodic, and definitely it should have at least one nocturnal attack. Then you will diagnose the asthma. Then what are the treatments? Treatment is, for this you should give bronchodilators. In this bronchodilators you give beta-2 agonists can be given. Okay, so you can give beta-2 agonists and you can also give anticholinergics also. Okay, if you give beta-2 agonists, these beta-2 agonists, these can be short acting and long acting. In short acting beta-2 agonists, you can give salbutamol, albuterol, terbutaline. Okay, in this both chronic and acute asthma, these can be given short acting bronchodilators. Okay, because they are short acting, they have shorter duration of action, that is they are just active for 3 to 6 hours, and they have maximum bronchodilator effect and minimum side effect. Obviously you are giving them in inhaled route, and as a result they won't have any systemic side effects. Then what are the long acting bronchodilators? Long acting bronchodilators are salmeterol and formoterol. These are can also be given, because these are long acting. These can be given if there is any nocturnal or exercise induced asthma, because in nocturnal asthma you can't ask the child to get up every 3 to 6 hours and take the drug. Instead, if the duration of action is more than 12 hours, it is feasible for the child to take the drug. So in these cases, in nocturnal or exercise induced asthma, you will ask the child to take this salmeterol or formoterol, which are long acting beta-2 agonists. So these long acting beta-2 agonists have some side effects. Among all the side effects, most common side effect is muscle tremors. Muscle tremors is the most common side effect among all the side effects which you see. There can be palpitations and hypokalemia also. Okay, these can be used along with other inhaled corticosteroids also. Then these beta blockers, you should always be cautious while you are giving in patients with CVS disease, hypertension, diabetes mellitus, and coronary artery disease and hypothyroidism. The next group of drugs are anticholinergics. In this anticholinergics, generally you don't use anticholinergics because they don't have more action. They are not more potent than beta agonists. So they are only given in those conditions when beta agonists are contraindicated, most commonly due to heart disease. What are the anticholinergics? You can use tiotropium bromide or ipratropium bromide. Okay. What is the disadvantage? Here the bronchodilation action, in order to start the bronchodilation action itself, it takes 90 minutes. Normally if you see these beta agonists, their onset of action is very fast. But if you see these anticholinergics, it takes 90 minutes for them to act. So it is a little disadvantage. So they even have side effects. Most common side effect in anticholinergics is dry mouth. This also causes other side effects like urinary retention and glaucoma. Then the next drug which can be used is theophylline or doxycycline, can be used in asthma or nocturnal cough. Then we can use aminoterine also. Then that is for acute attacks. If you have to see controller therapies, you can give inhaled corticosteroids, can be given, which are beclomethasone or budesonide. Okay, you can also give systemic corticosteroids, which are used for IV. Systemic corticosteroids can be given like IV triamcinolone acetate, can be given in medroxyprogesterone. The side effect of IV systemic corticosteroids is myopathy. Okay, then you can also give anti-leukotrienes like zafirleucast or montelukast. Then you can also give chromones or mast cell inhibitors. Then steroid sparing effects are also used in some patients like methotrexate. Normally we don't use in normal patients. Okay, anti-IgE like omalizumab can also be used. Okay, now there is also immunotherapy which is available. These are the future therapies which are being tried, like blockers of interleukin 5, TNF alpha antibodies have been tried, but they are not effective. Similarly, inhibitors of PDE4 and NFK beta and P38 MAP kinase are also tried. Okay, then if there is acute severe asthma, when do you call it as acute severe asthma? If there is severe bronchospasm, okay, increased chest tightness, wheezing and dyspnea, then you call it as acute severe asthma. In this patient, the child is unable to complete a sentence and he becomes cyanotic. See, in acute severe asthma, most important thing is obviously there will be increased respiratory rate, there will be hyperresonance lung sounds, there will be tachycardia, pulsus paradoxicus, it is present in acute severe asthma. There will be feeble breath sounds. Inspiratory to expiratory ratio is equal to 1:3 or 1:4. As I have already told you why there will be hypoxia and hyperventilation, right? Because of this leads to respiratory failure. So this asthma is divided into mild, moderate and severe. See, this is the old classification. Now there has been new classification which I have uploaded a new video. Okay, then there is something called as brittle asthma. Okay, what is this brittle asthma? See, this is actually of two types. This brittle asthma is also called as refractory asthma. Here, even after administration of drugs, okay, there can be sudden deterioration. There is sudden variation in lung function, that is brittle asthma. It is of two types. There is type 1 brittle asthma and type 2 brittle asthma. In type 1 brittle asthma, there is persistent pattern of variability. See, there is this normal pattern of variability and suddenly you see deterioration. That is seen in type 1. Okay, there will be persistent pattern of variability and suddenly there will be deterioration. They will be already on oral corticosteroids or beta agonists. And why is it sudden deterioration? It was thought to be due to infection. And because it is due to infection, you should give antibiotics and beta agonists should be given. Okay, then what is about type 2? In type 2 or brittle asthma, here there will be normal or near normal lung function. And in this, the patient does not respond to corticosteroids. And this is not reversed by inhaled bronchodilators. Here what should you do? You should give subcutaneous epinephrine. So how does it? Here if you see, the patient is asymptomatic and suddenly he develops symptomatic. See, here the child will have symptoms. Okay, some symptoms will be there and suddenly there will be deterioration. Here the child is asymptomatic and suddenly there is deterioration. Okay, here the mechanism is local anaphylaxis. So this is the differences between type 1 and type 2 brittle asthma. Okay, the last thing is some variants of asthma. So we have nocturnal asthma. Here this asthma manifests mostly at the night. At overnight there will be fall in FEV1 to more than 20%. Then we call it as nocturnal asthma. The second type of asthma is gastric asthma. Here it occurs due to GERD. Okay, so it is most common in proton pump inhibitors. The third type of asthma is exercise induced asthma. As the name says, here the asthma is due to exercise. Here you should give inhaled bronchodilators. Which bronchodilators do you give? Here you give beta 2 agonists. And which beta 2 agonists? You should give long acting beta 2 agonists in exercise induced asthma. Okay, then there is called as something called as thunderstorm asthma. Thunderstorm asthma occurs due to broken pollen grains. Whenever there is broken pollen grains, the child causes thunderstorm asthma. Okay, whenever there is intact pollen grains, there will be allergic rhinitis. Whenever there is broken pollen grains, then you have thunderstorm asthma. Remember that intact pollen grains causes allergic rhinitis, broken pollen grains causes thunderstorm asthma. So this is completely about asthma. What is left in asthma is treatment of asthma, that is what type of treatment you give. Recently there is GINA guidelines have come 2013, which I will let you know in the next class. So thank you guys for watching my lecture. Thank you.